Welcome to the fourth webisode of First Edition, the all things comics, film, and pop culture web show. And now for reviews, starting with Kick-Ass 3 number 7 by Mark Millar and John Romita Jr. This issue was definitely worth the wait, as it picks up directly after the climactic final events of issue 6. It looks to be the end for Hit Girl, but a surprise turn of events turns the tables on Hit Girl's captors. By the end of the issue, it's clear that Kick-Ass and Hit Girl are preparing for war. As usual, John Romita Jr.'s art is spot on, with every panel electrifying the page, while Millar's scripting and dialogue is equally moving and creates a sense of impending doom. Mark Millar hinted that Kick-Ass 3 would be the final series of Kick-Ass stories, and that he was building to a dramatic conclusion. And after killing off a major character in this issue, I definitely got the feeling that the upcoming final issue would be the end for these characters. If this issue is an indication of what's in store for the final issue, I can't wait to read it. Definitely check this one out. I also love DC's free comic book day offering, Futures End number 0. This issue kicks off a high-profile 11-month weekly series. Issue 0 is written by Brian Azzarello, with cover art by Ryan Sook and interior art by Ethan Van Sciver. Let me start by saying I'm a sucker for stories about heroes trying to prevent dystopian futures. As I mentioned earlier, X-Men Days of Future Past is my favorite comic book storyline ever, so it was easy for me to enjoy Futures End. If you guessed that this story involved a last-ditch effort from the last remaining heroes of the DC Universe to prevent a horrible future, then you guessed all you need to know about Futures End. Without spoiling too much, I'll say that the highlight of the comic involves Terry McGinnis, aka Batman Beyond. If you're a fan of the character, you will probably be very pleased with this issue. Azzarello's script manages to create high stakes for the DC New 52 universe, and Van Sciver's interior art is truly visceral and captures every terrifying detail of this horrific future. I also loved Ryan Sook's cover art, which caught my eye as soon as I began making my free comic book day selections. The only negatives I could say is that if you're burned out on the dystopian future storylines, then this may be just another flavor of the month for you. Next up is IDW's V-Wars, number 1, written by John Mayberry, with art by Alan Robinson and cover art by Ryan Brown. IDW also offered V-Wars number 0 for free comic book day, which I also read. V-Wars chronicles the impending war between humans and those infected with a vampire virus. What impressed me most about this comic was the focus on the political aspects of the war between humans and a population infected with vampire virus. This comic could have easily followed familiar territory, but the political aspect was something I felt was its biggest draw. Mayberry deserves credit for crafting an engaging first issue that made me want to see what comes next, while Robinson's interior art is gritty and detailed, perfectly appropriate for this matured story. Ryan Brown's cover art of a vampire-infected businesswoman perfectly informs potential readers of what to expect from the comic. Overall, this is a strong first issue. Image's The Walking Dead number 126 is the finale to the storyline All Out War. Written by Robert Kirkman with art by Charlie Adlard, this story reveals the final outcome of Rick and his survivors versus Negan and his army, the Saviors. As much as I like this issue for setting up future potentially interesting storylines, I have to say that I wanted more from this issue, and I'm sure any diehard fans of Glenn would probably feel the same. While this storyline lived up to its promises of death and destruction, and every issue had a lot of strong moments, after reading the conclusion, I almost feel like this storyline was overly drawn out. There is a resolution in this issue, and some characters deal with it better than others. There are also strong character moments from many of the characters like Michonne, Negan, Carl, and Rick. The exchanges between Rick and Negan especially make this issue worth reading, as well as the interaction between Rick and Carl. Like I mentioned earlier, this issue is a conclusion to the storyline, but also sets up an interesting story dynamic for future stories going forward. Now for Cross Badlands number 50, The 50th issue of Avatar Comics' horrific juggernaut returns cross-creator and comic legend Garth Ennis to tell the tale of the origin of the virus that has destroyed the world. This issue kicks off part 1 of the 7-part storyline, The Thin Red Line. Ennis teams with artist Christian Zanier, who also does the main cover illustration. It should be noted that this issue comes in 9 variant horror covers. I must admit I was a little disappointed with this issue. Usually anniversary issues like a 25th or 50th issue offers a major reveal or important event occurring, but this one did not. Don't get me wrong, this issue promises major things to come, but on its own merits, it's just a setup issue with no real payoff. Being that it is part 1 of a 7-issue storyline, I get that it sets up events, but for being an anniversary issue I was disappointed. As always though, I am impressed with Ennis' ability to craft interesting characters that you know things will not end well for these people, but he makes you like, and so you hope that somehow they manage to survive what's about to happen. Zanier's interior art is highly detailed and precise, which is suitable to the setup issue, which is the calm before the storm. As a huge fan of Ennis's, I definitely look forward to the next issue, but I really wish this issue had included more. This is also a good jumping on point for those interested in checking out the Cross series, but keep in mind this comic is extremely graphic. Next up is the Marvel Now release of Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3 Number 1. At over 70 pages in length, this comic is massive and packed with several stories as well as the first full issue of Inhumans Number 1. This issue returns Peter Parker to the mantle of Spider-Man after his apparent death at the hands of Dr. Octopus, who would also go on to replace him, becoming the Superior Spider-Man. As much as I enjoyed Doc Ock's turn as the Superior Spider-Man, I didn't know how much I missed Peter Parker, Spider-Man, until I read this issue. The main story is by Master Spider-Man writer Dan Slott, with cover art and main interior art from artist Humberto Ramos. This issue also has 9 variant covers for those variant chasers out there, not including retailer and Comic-Con exclusives. Slott has definitely made a name for himself as a top Spider-Man creator, and it looks like he has many more stories to tell. Ramos' art is polarizing with many fans, either loving it or hating it, but as a Ramos fan, I really enjoyed his art in this issue. This comic was a great start to what looks to be another golden age for the Amazing Spider-Man, and I would definitely recommend this as a good jumping on point for new readers. The main story was especially enjoyable and reminiscent of the original 1963 Amazing Spider-Man number 1 story. One of my favorite scenes from the story centered on Mary Jane's reaction after learning of Parker's return. There were also several other stories, with each focusing on various characters like Spider-Man 2099 and the Black Cat. These stories serve to set up future plot threads, and I'm most interested in seeing what happens with the Black Cat, who looks to be taking a turn in a different direction after her encounter with the Superior Spider-Man. And the Inhumans number 1 issue is also an added bonus, and I'm really looking forward to what Marvel has in store for these classic characters. This was an all-around great read, and leaves me looking forward to upcoming issues. For my final review, I wanted to discuss a favorite trade paperback of mine called We 3. Written by acclaimed writer Grant Morrison, with art from the equally acclaimed artist Frank Catelli, We 3 is a tale of 3 animal military experiments, a dog called 1, a cat called 2, and a rabbit called 3, who have escaped and are on the run, searching for a place to call home. This miniseries is only 3 issues long, but it's sharp and to the point with no added fluff. I especially love this story because I am an advocate for animal rights, so it was easy to cheer for the 3 as they race to freedom. Now, the use of animal bioweapons is not a new concept, but Morrison and Catelli managed to breathe fresh air into this concept and craft uniquely powerful animal characters who are as interesting as any human character. Morrison's script, while fast-paced, never shorts the story, and every character, especially the 3 animal weapons, are incredibly well-crafted and full-fleshed characters. I especially enjoyed the method of communication, which was unique and definitely complemented the story. Catelli's art is also incredible. Known for his unique art style, Catelli's work shines here with beautiful panel layouts and design. You can clearly see the level of detail in every panel, and it speaks volumes about the quality of work this writer-artist team does together. While the story is mainly an action story, there are also moments of humor and drama that add layers and complexity to this impressive story. This story is easily one of my favorite comic book stories, and I would highly recommend it to anyone, especially fans of Grant Morrison and Frank Catelli. Now for a new segment I call Cover the Cover. In this segment, I'll talk about individual comic covers and discuss why I love them so much. In this first segment, I'd like to discuss Marvel Comics' What If number 13. Published in February of 1978, this What If asked the question, what if Conan the Barbarian had walked the earth today? The cover copy states, "At last, the most requested, longest awaited, and most controversial tale ever of the world's most savage hero." I absolutely love this cover illustration, showcasing a defiant Conan the Barbarian with his sword drawn and his back against the wall, and in the spotlight and crosshairs of several gunmen. This iconic cover was illustrated by the great John Buscema, with inks from Ernie Chan, coloring from Glynis Wein, and lettering by Joe Rosen. Buscema is a master artist, and he infuses the illustration with countless details. I especially love Conan's defiant poise and intense facial expression. Ernie Chan's seamless but integral inking job contributes to the heightened look of this comic. I also love the coloring work done by Glynis Wein. The bright colors elevate the illustration, while Joe Rosen's bombastic lettering draws the eye's attention immediately. What If number 13 is one of my most prized comic books, and with a spectacular cover, it's easy to see why. In today's segment of 5 to Watch, I'd like to talk about 5 new upcoming TV shows I'm most excited for. The first show on my list is Constantine. With all of the supernatural-themed programming that's aired on major networks, it was only a matter of time before someone decided a certain Hellblazer should get his own TV program. I was pleasantly surprised after viewing the trailer, and I think the show has some promise. While I would have preferred FX, HBO, or AMC to produce the show, due to its mature themes and subject matter, from what I've seen in the trailer, NBC looks to try and do the character justice. Constantine follows the supernatural exploits of a mysterious conman who may be our only hope in a war against the supernatural. John Constantine made his comics debut in issue 37 of the critically acclaimed Swamp Thing series by Alan Moore, Steve Bissette, and John Totleben. This character also starred in his own comic series titled Hellblazer for over 300 issues, and also had his own film in 2005 starring Keanu Reeves as John Constantine, along with Rachel Weisz, Shia LaBeouf, and Tilda Swinton. The newest incarnation of John Constantine will be played by actor Matt Ryan, along with Lucy Griffiths as Liv and Harold Perrineau as the Archangel Manny. It remains to be seen what tone the series will have, but based on the brief trailer, it looks to have all of the charm of our beloved anti-hero, and I can't wait to see it. Constantine airs October 24th, 2014 on NBC. Number 2 on my list of upcoming shows to watch is the FX adaptation of the critically acclaimed novel The Strain by Guillermo del Toro and Chuck Hogan. I'm a huge Del Toro fan, so when I heard he collaborated on writing a book, I had to read it. I've read the first 2 books of this trilogy, and I really enjoyed them, so I can't wait to see the show. Here is a brief overview of the story. After a plane lands under mysterious circumstances, emergency teams led by epidemiologist Dr. Ephraim Goodweather are deployed to discover the cause. They have no idea that this is the heralding event of a plan enacted by an ancient sinister force. Casting includes Corey Stoll as Dr. Ephraim Goodweather, David Bradley as Professor Abraham Satrakian, Mia Maestro as Dr. Nora Martinez, and Robert Millay as the Master. One of the reasons I'm so excited for this show is Del Toro and Hogan's take on the vampire mythology. This story has an interesting take on the undying bloodsuckers, and I'll just say they're nothing like the ones seen in Twilight. With a new take on vampires and interesting characters, this book looks to make for an interesting TV show. I'm especially happy this property landed on FX because they have a strong track record with mature programming. And after viewing their teaser trailer and viral ads, I think they'll do it justice. The Strain debuts on July 13, 2014 on FX. Third on my list is The Flash. When The Flash was introduced on the CW's Arrow, I was excited because I took it as a sign of things to come. By the way, if you haven't seen Arrow, check it out, it's a great show. But back to The Flash. I had some apprehension about a TV Flash, mainly because visual effects are expensive, and in order to create the visual effects of The Flash and his world, it would cost quite a lot of money, something TV shows have been known to shy away from, for the most part. But after viewing the trailer for the upcoming show, I'm pleased to say my fears have been relieved, and the show looks to be an excellent interpretation of the character. For those not familiar with the character, The Flash is one of DC Comics' premier superheroes and is gifted with the ability to move at incredible speeds. The original Flash made his comics debut in Flash Comics #1 in 1940, starring the original Flash, Jay Garrick, and was created by Gardner Fox and Harry Lampert. The incarnation of the Flash who will appear on the CW's program will be Barry Allen, whose comics debut was in DC Comics Showcase #4 in 1956, and he was created by Robert Kanigher, Carmine Infantino, and John Broome. The show will star Grant Gustin as Barry Allen, aka The Flash, with Candice Patton as Iris West, along with Rick Cosnett as Professor Zoom, and many others. If the CW gives The Flash as much care and development as they do with Arrow, they should have another hit on their hands, not to mention 2 potential leaguers to join the rumored Justice League team being developed in the film Batman vs. Superman. The Flash debuts on the CW this fall 2014. The fourth entry on my list is the upcoming Fox series Gotham. When I first heard rumors about this project, I wasn't sure what to think. I must admit I am interested in seeing a live-action Batman series, but I just want to see it done right. After viewing the trailer, I'm happy to say this show looks like it's going to be great. Gotham the series will take place in the years preceding Batman and will focus on a young James Gordon and his efforts to protect the city plagued by crime. Starring as a young James Gordon will be Ben McKenzie, with Donald Logue as Harvey Bullock, Sean Pertwee as Alfred Pennyworth, and David Mazouz as a young Bruce Wayne, along with many others. After viewing the trailer for this show, I'm really excited because this show seems to have crime noir themes along with elements of the Batman mythos woven in. I especially like that the show will focus on a young James Gordon, as well as the overall casting for this show. I look forward to seeing a more action-oriented show with Ben McKenzie and Donald Logue bringing a lot of physicality to the roles. My only concern is that the show may flop on Fox because Fox has a track record of failed genre television programming. I hope it can find its audience because this show has a lot of promise. Gotham will air this fall 2014 on Fox. The last entry on my list has been rumored for some time, and after a short film was included on the Iron Man 3 special features, I became even more excited for a spin-off TV series. Can you guess what character is getting their own show? Well, if you said Agent Carter, you would be correct. Agent Peggy Carter, played by Hayley Atwell, was a major character in the film Captain America: The First Avenger. After the film's tragic ending left many people, including myself, wanting more time with the World War II era heroes, I hope that a potential series would be announced continuing the adventures of Agent Carter, Howard Stark, and the Howling Commandos. Fans' hopes and prayers were answered when it was announced that an Agent Carter television series was in development. The series will chronicle the adventures of the founding Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and their efforts to protect their ever-changing world. Like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the show will be set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but will be set back in the 1940s. Hayley Atwell and Dominic Cooper will reprise their roles as Agent Peggy Carter and Howard Stark, respectively. And it wouldn't surprise me if some of the other Howling Commandos showed up too. I am most hoping to see an appearance from Tommy Lee Jones's character, Colonel Chester Phillips. While there hasn't been too much teaser imagery released to the public, the Agent Carter Marvel one-shot on the Iron Man 3 special features is an excellent primer for what to expect from the show. I really enjoyed the one-shot and thought if a show could be made that was as enjoyable as the short film, then Marvel would have another hit on its hands. Another reason I'm happy this show was greenlit is because I have nieces, and other than Black Widow and Lady Sif, there aren't too many other leading female characters in the Marvel films or comics films in general. This show is significant because it would offer a strong female character leading her own show and who offer an alternative role model for young girls who have had plenty of male superhero role models but few female superhero role models. Agent Carter is set to debut this January 2015. And as promised, I want to talk to you about the coming apocalypse. Specifically, the character Apocalypse, who is the ancient mutant who will be challenging the X-Men in the upcoming sequel to X-Men Days of Future Past. Apocalypse has been one of the X-Men's greatest enemies since his inception and can single-handedly destroy them all. While Professor Xavier champions peaceful coexistence and Magneto champions mutant domination, Apocalypse believes in only one thing. He believes in survival of the fittest. Apocalypse doesn't even care about the mutant cause, as he will just as easily kill a weak mutant as he will kill a helpless human. What also makes Apocalypse so deadly is that he is incredibly powerful, and the X-Men never really beat him. With every battle, they only manage to stop his plans for domination. So here's the top 5 Apocalypse appearances and storylines. For number 1, let's start with Apocalypse's first cameo appearance in X Factor number 5, and his first full appearance in X Factor number 6. Created by Louise Simonson and Jackson Geese with a conceptual art from Walter Simonson, Apocalypse was meant to be an incredible threat to the X Factor team, an enemy on par with Magneto and as powerful as even the Avengers' greatest enemies. He lived up to that hope and would become one of the X-Men's most feared and recurring threats. Number 2. Apocalypse's next greatest appearance was in X Factor number 24. This issue is so important because Apocalypse delivers one of the greatest blows to the X-Men by turning one of them to his cause. After Warren Worthington III, aka Angel, was thought to have been killed, it was later revealed that he was abducted by Apocalypse and transformed into the powerful Archangel. Archangel would lead Apocalypse's 4 horsemen as the greatest horseman, Death. With this feat, Apocalypse managed to cause tremendous damage to the X-Men, with ramifications that are still felt today. X Factor number 68 is another key Apocalypse issue. After kidnapping Cyclops and Madeline Pryor's son, Nathan Summers, Apocalypse then conquers a portion of the Inhumans' kingdom on the moon, known as the Great Refuge, and enslaves some of their people. It takes the combined efforts of X Factor and the Inhumans to combat Apocalypse. X Factor and the Inhumans defeat Apocalypse, but it's a hollow victory as Cyclops is forced to make a decision that will haunt him forevermore. This issue is important because not only do readers get a chance to see how incredibly powerful Apocalypse is, but also because seeds are planted for future Apocalypse storylines, as well as the later introduction of a certain fan-favorite mutant soldier from the future who goes by the name of Cable. Number 4. Another Apocalypse-centric storyline was called The 12, and affected every major X-Men comic in the late 1990s. Seeds of this story had been planted in previous X-Men stories leading up to this storyline, but the main story begins in Uncanny X-Men number 376. In an attempt to become all-powerful, Apocalypse abducted 12 of the world's most powerful mutants. He also managed to enslave Wolverine and turn him into his deadliest horseman ever, as Death. Apocalypse nearly succeeds in his efforts and is only beaten when an X-Men makes the ultimate sacrifice to stop him. This is another storyline that proves why Apocalypse is such an incredibly powerful threat. Number 5. And maybe Apocalypse's greatest accomplishment occurred after Charles Xavier met an untimely demise during the storyline called Legion Quest. What came next would be the Age of Apocalypse. Beginning in the comic X-Men Alpha, the Age of Apocalypse was a massive storyline in the mid-1990s that affected all of the X-Men comic titles. The Age of Apocalypse was an alternate timeline where Apocalypse ruled, and survival of the fittest was the law of the land. It was a completely different universe, where Magneto was leader of the X-Men, and the X-Men themselves were darker, sometimes even twisted versions of themselves. This storyline is so important because it gave viewers a glimpse into what Apocalypse's ideal world would be like, and would go on to become one of the X-Men's greatest storylines ever. It's also been hinted at by the X-Men film producers that they may incorporate elements of this alternate timeline into the upcoming film X-Men Apocalypse. Be sure to check out some of these issues in preparation for the upcoming 2016 film X-Men Apocalypse. Okay, that's it for the show. Come back for the next webisode of First Edition for more comics, film, and pop culture talk, news, and commentary. And if you like the show, please share, like, subscribe, and comment. Thanks guys, bye.